Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Nutrition for the Family. This is the sixth module in which we are studying about the nutrition care for the infants. And this is the third and last lecture of this module in which we shall be focusing on feeding of infants. I am Dr. Jaspreet Kaur, presently working as Associate Professor in Government College for Girls, Ludhiana, Punjab, affiliated to Punjab University, Chandigarh, and this project is funded by DTH Swayam Prabha, MHRD, New Delhi. In the previous lecture, we had studied about the micronutrient requirements of the infants, and we also studied about the composition of breast milk. Then we studied about the timeline of milk production and about the colostrum, transitional milk, and the mature milk and its importance. And then we studied about the advantages of the breastfeeding to the infant and mother. In this lecture, we shall be studying about artificial feeding, what are the milk substitutes and special infant foods. And then we will also study about feeding of low birth weight and preterm infants. Then we will focus on what are the problems which are associated with feeding this type of infants. And lastly, we will focus on the weaning foods, the process of weaning, and problems associated with the weaning. So let's start. No milk can be a real substitute for mother's milk, but sometimes it is necessary to give artificial feeding also. When do we need to take the help of artificial feeding? If the mother is suffering from serious illness, she is having fever or infection, or there is another pregnancy which is interfering with the lactation process, or the child is too weak to nurse in some conditions, he has hair lip or cleft palate, or the breast milk it has stopped due to some reason, or it is insufficient and cannot meet the needs of the infant, the mother is not available due to any reason, or the mother is she is on anticoagulants or on the steroids or certain radioactive drugs, and death of the mother. So what are the advantages of this type of feeding? It creates no additional requirements in the mother because the mother is not feeding, so there is no pressure on her body, and there's no problem in establishing the milk supply because we are taking the top feed. The volume of milk given, it is visible as we can see how much milk a child has taken. The feeding in public, it is considered comfortable. Other members of the family, they can also feed the baby. The mother need not to be available all time, and it is convenient for the working mothers who cannot be physically present and feed them. And provided the correct amount is given, it is considered nutritionally adequate also. The data, it shows that the cows or the goat or the sheep or the buffalo milk, it is richer in protein as compared to human milk, and it is lower in the carbohydrates. So therefore, judicious dilution with the boiled water and addition of sugar, it is to be made to bring the composition near to the human milk. And if cow's milk is given to the infant, the dilution to the tune of 1 part of water and 1 part of milk should be given, and which can be gradually reduced so that the infant gets whole cow's milk at the end of 6 months of his age. And the amount of sugar, it has to be added, say 1 teaspoon for the first week to 4 teaspoons by the 6 months in a day. And buffalo's milk, it is richer than cow's milk because of its higher fat content, and it can be partially skimmed, it can be diluted with the water, and then sugar can be added to it. This will reduce the vitamin A content of the milk. Therefore, vitamin A supplements, they are to be added in the diet of such infants. Some babies, they are not able to digest buffalo's milk because it forms a thick curd in the stomach, and they find it difficult to digest. So some infants who cannot tolerate any animal milk, they are allergic to it. They can take groundnut or the soybean milk. Soybean milk is more satisfactory from nutritional point of view, and infants who are brought up on this milk with suitable vitamins and minerals added to it, they grow quite well. As far as possible, bottles should not be given to the baby, and the traditional methods such as using katori or the spoon or the cup, it should be employed. And but because of some reasons the bottle has to be used, then one should boil the bottle and nipples before every feed and ensure that they are sterile and they do not become source of infection. Since the top milk, it is not the mother's milk, so it has to be sterilized, and it should be boiled before giving it to child. And little amount of vitamin C, which is present in the milk, as it is boiled, so it will be lost. Hence, care should be taken to ensure that the foodstuffs which are containing vitamin C, such as orange juice or the tomato juice, they should be given to the child. Let's talk about certain special infant foods now as milk substitutes. So dried or powdered cow milk, it is used, and it is used for the infant feeding by adding 8 times its weight with the water, and they are processed so that they resemble human milk in the composition, and vitamin C, it should be added uh, for the benefit of the infant. And dried skim milk, it should not be used as a sole source for the infant feeding. And in situation where there is no other type of milk available, such milk, it can be used with vitamin A supplementation. And along with that, condensed milk, it is also used in certain cases, as it contains 20% of the sugar. Dilution of its proportionately, it will reduces the protein, fat, and mineral content of the milk. So further, the sugar, it may cause intestinal irritation and upset the stomach of the baby. Now let's talk about certain pre-lacteal feeds. They are the foods or the liquids which are given to the child before giving mother's milk. As it is a ritual and a tradition which is practiced in our country, all the pre-lacteal feeds like honey or the ghutti or the gripe water, glucose water, or the animal milk, they are considered harmful, as they can actually lead to diarrhea and other infections to the newborn can happen. And introduction of these pre-lacteal feeds, it not only delays the breastfeeding, but it will also deprive the child from the colostrum, and it will hamper the establishment of successful lactation also. So the exclusive breastfeeding means feeding the baby only breast milk for the first 6 months of the child life, and no other milk, food, drink, or even water is to be given to the child for the first 6 months. And the drops or the syrups of vitamins, minerals, medicines, and the oral rehydration solution, that is ORS, they are the exceptions which are permitted during this phase. When we are talking about feeding the baby, there are two conditions: when the baby is having very low birth weight or he is a preterm baby. Now these conditions, they need extra care. The low birth weight babies are the babies who are born with the birth weight which is less than 2500 grams. That means 2.5 kilograms of their weight. And the mothers whose pre-pregnancy weight is less than 40 kg, it serves as a useful cutoff to predict whether the woman will be having a low birth weight baby. And the preterm babies, they are those babies who are born before 37 weeks of gestation, and they are underweight because they have been having shorter duration of full term gestation inside their mother's body. And the feeding of these type of children, it is a major challenge as it needs lot of care to handle low birth weight babies. The preterm babies, they are best fed with the unprocessed human milk which is obtained from their mothers. And it has been shown that milk of mothers who are delivering prematurely, they have high calorific value. It is high in fat, protein and sodium content, which is suitable for the nutritional needs of the low birth weight babies. And antimicrobial property of the breast milk, it is of great importance to the preterm baby. And as we know, the incidence of infectious diseases, it is very common, and we can actually reduce the incidence of these diseases and sepsis in the preterm babies. Now let us discuss certain nutritional disorders related to the feeding. Tooth decay, it is common among infants and children who are given sugar sweetened beverages or the fruit juices or the milk in a bottle at bedtime. So they sleep with that milk in their mouth, and it stays and decays the tooth. Therefore, infants should be fed, they should be burped and put to bed without milk or juice bottle in their mouth. And the second disorder could be underfeeding. Now, it is suggested by the restlessness or the crying and by failure to gain weight adequately despite complete emptying of the breast of the mother or complete emptying of the bottle. Now, this may result from infant's failure to take sufficient amount of food even when he is been offered in sufficient amount. Constipation is common among the artificially fed infants because of insufficient amount of food or fluid. In other cases, it may result from the diets which are high in fat or protein, or they are deficient in the bulk. So, by simply increasing the amount of fluids or sugar, it may actually correct this condition. And after that, colic is another important problem with the young infants, and it actually describes frequent symptoms which are of say abdominal pain, and it arises from intestines, and the infant, he cries a lot. It occurs usually in infants who are younger than 3 months. So the prevention of attack should be sought by improving the feeding techniques, by burping properly, by providing a stable emotional environment to the child, by identifying any allergic foods in infants' diet or in the mother's diet, and avoiding underfeeding and overfeeding. And after that, diarrhea is another issue which is very uncommon among the breastfed infants, but mild diarrhea disturbance due to overfeeding respond. It can be corrected by withholding food for some time temporarily. Weaning comes from food. Vemian means to accustom. And weaning begins when we start supplementary food, and it continues till the child is taken off the breast milk completely. The ideal time to start semi-solid food is when the baby is ready to sit up, to swallow and taste other foods, and the baby's stomach, it is ready to digest food, and he has good appetite and accepts the food readily. Why do we need to wean the child of the breast milk? As we know, for the first 6 months of the life, the baby is completely dependent upon his mother. So, with the increasing needs of energy, protein, and many other nutrients, the mother's milk alone cannot meet the needs of the growing baby. So as the output of mother's milk also decreases. And along with that, we know that milk, it is a poor source of vitamin C and iron also. And the baby, he is born with a store of vitamin C and iron which lasts for say 4 to 6 months. So after that period, we need to provide this from certain food sources. If the baby has to maintain expected rate of growth, and he has to remain healthy and well nourished, so the supplementary feeding, it has to be restored around 6 months of age. And the supply of the milk which was coming from the mother, it decreases. Now it could be because the baby suckles less frequently and less vigorously and less effectively at the mother's breast. So including introducing the foods too late, it can lead to malnutrition of the infant, and it can increase the diarrheal morbidity also. And many studies, they have shown that the child will become unwilling to accept the new food if we delay it after 6 months. So what are the common types of supplements? The first type of supplement are liquid supplements. So say about 6 months of baby's life, the frequency of breastfeeding is reduced to 3 to 4 times per day, and animal milk is substituted. Since the proportion of nutrients in the animal milk, they differ from that of the human milk. So the cow's milk is diluted with the water, and in a proportion of 2 is to 1 for some days. The amount of water, it is gradually reduced so that after a few weeks the baby gets undiluted animal milk. Two feeds of 225 ml daily, it is an ideal replacement. And sugar can be added to improve the taste and increase the calories of the milk supplement. Along with that, juices of fresh fruits, they can be given. It is important to start feeding small quantities of fresh fruit juice after the 6 months. Say oranges, tomato, sweet lime, grape juice, it can be given. In early stages, juice is diluted with an equal amount of boiled and cooled water, and a few teaspoons they are given till the time baby is accustomed to its taste. Soup from green leafy vegetables, they can be given. If the fresh fruits, they are not available, then it is an ideal thing to do. The strained soups, they can be given in the beginning, and it can be followed by unstrained soups later on. And along with that, fish liver oil is recommended, as it is a good source of vitamin A and vitamin D. A few drops, they can be mixed in small quantities of milk, and it can be given to the baby. Along with that, we can give solid supplements in well mashed form before feeding. So this mashed food, it is started say around 7 to 8 month of the baby's life. And in this mashed form, cereals and starchy gruels can be considered to meet the increasing demand of the calorie and the protein. What we do, we use well cooked mashed cereals which are mixed with the milk and sugar, which can be given. So the calorie dense cereals, they can be prepared by using wheat and rice, and it can be used in the form of porridge also. Potatoes and green leafy vegetables, they can be introduced to get good supply of vitamins and minerals. And fruits, all fruits except banana. Banana, as we know, it can be mashed. So the other fruits, they can be stewed and sieved. And the fruits can be stewed by cooking them in small amount of water. And to that, we can add little sugar and lime juice to enhance its flavor. And we can always give hard boiled egg yolk, which is a good source of vitamin A, protein, and iron. A whole egg can also be given, say, in the poached form. Poaching means cooking the egg in boiling water, or we can give soft boiled egg, and the baby can take a good amount of egg, full with egg yolk and egg white by the time he is 1 year of his age, and he'll be able to digest it properly. So along with that, well cooked pulses along with cereals, they can be given, for example, in the form of khichdi. When the baby starts relishing and digesting the mashed food, the time we can start with unmashed solid supplements. So the indication is when the baby has got teeth and he's starting to cut the food, or he's able to use his teeth. So the thick consistency foods, they can be added. For example, we can go for cooked cereals, pulses, or vegetable, etc. A slice of raw vegetable or fruit or biscuit or a piece of chapati or the bread, they can be a good exercise for gums also. So as the months they pass, the foods which are prepared for the family, they can be ultimately given to the child. A portion of cooked food, it can be removed before spices they are added. So it is not a good idea to give very spicy food to the child. Along with that, we can always go for certain processed foods also. So homemade or commercial processed foods, they can be given as weaning food. So the homemade processed weaning food can be prepared by using either cereals or pulses, nuts or jaggery, with or without adding milk products. Though the processed foods are like pasta can be given, then rusk can be given, vermicelli or biscuits, they can be given. What are the important points which are to be considered while weaning the infant? Introduce only one food at a time. And we should allow the infant to become familiar with the food before trying to give another one. We should not be testing too many foods together. And it is important that we give very small amount of any new food at the beginning. For example, 1 teaspoon of a food, of a juice, or for khichdi. So at first, strained fruits and vegetables and cereals, they are to be given. The fruit juice should be fed only by the cup and not by the bottle. When the baby is able to chew, gradually we should substitute finely chopped fruits and vegetables, usually at the 8 or 9 months of the baby. Variety in choice of the foods, which are the weaning foods, it is very important. And infant, he may object to taking some foods by themselves, but they will take them willingly if one is mixing them with other foods. Say if egg is mixed with the formula or the cereal or the vegetables, the child may accept it readily. And if after several trials, the baby he has acute dislike for a particular food, it should be omitted. And after a gap of 1 week or the 2 weeks, then it should be tried again. The mother or anyone feeding should avoid showing dislike for a particular food in front of an infant. The baby's appetite, it varies a lot from meal to meal and from day to day, so the mother should be considerate of this change. Use a thin consistency when we are starting with the solid foods, and gradually the consistency, it can be made more solid, and the child, he can be fed with a katori or a spoon, and the baby gets used to this method of feeding once we keep on doing same thing again and again. And to make the food calorie dense, we should add oil, butter or ghee to the infant's diet. The food should be given between the breastfeeds. And it is good idea to give freshly prepared food only, as stale food may cause some gastric distress or may cause certain infections to the baby. And the food should be slightly seasoned, and the water, it can be given in between the feedings with a cup and spoon. These are certain suggested recipes for an infant. When he's 6 months, he can take fruit juice or green soups. They can be given to provide vitamin C, certain carotenes, riboflavin, And when the baby is 8 months old, he can take stewed apple or soft custard with egg yolk can be given to provide vitamin A, iron, to increase the calories, and khichdi, idli, chapati, milk, they can be given when the baby is 10 to 12 months old, and as they can be easily digested and they give calorie and good amount of protein to the baby. And along with that, malted cereals and gruels, which are made up of rice, rice flour, or flakes, cornflakes, and the milk, they can be given to meet the increased demand of calories and proteins. Now, let us study about certain nutritional problems which are associated with the weaning. So the first nutritional problem could be obesity. Many infants, they are overfed by the overzealous parents who mistake acceptance of food for the appetite. So too early or too much of the quantity feeding or too concentrated food, it can lead to overweight of the infants. On the other hand, too less quantity of food or less concentrated food, it can lead to underweight of the infant. And if the choice of food is not good and the child is being fed with bulky adult food, he will not be able to meet his calorie and other nutrient needs. And this will lead to malnutrition. And along with that, if there is frequent illness or there is repeated diarrhea, it can also lead to underweight of the children. Another problem associated with the weaning could be food allergy. As we do not know, because the child has been taking mother's milk only, so once the baby is exposed to different type of weaning foods, he may get allergic to certain food items. It could be wheat, it could be milk, it could be egg or citrus juices also. Lactose intolerance, it is not very common in the breastfed infants, but in some conditions where there is slow weight gain of the infant or there is failure to thrive among the best breastfed infants, they might be taking excessive lactose in their diet. This usually happens when the baby is not taking milk in the sufficient amount. What happens? He is taking only 4 milk from the mother's breast, and we have already read about the composition of foremilk and the hind milk. As the foremilk, it is rich in the lactose. So the hind milk, which is rich in the fats, and it is not getting proper let down, so what happens, it increases the amount of lactose in the baby's body, and that can cause lactose intolerance. Another common problem of the weaning is refusal of the baby to accept a new food. If the child is refusing to take a new food, it should be modified or mixed with foods which he is liking otherwise, and it should be tried again after a week or so. The baby might be spitting out the food as he is yet to master the tongue movement to take the solid food. So that is why once his tongue movement is developed, so he'll be able to accept the solid food also. Choking or aspiration, it is a serious problem of weaning. It can be caused as the child is trying to eat, run, and breathe at the same time. So the choking can be caused by certain foods such as peanuts or the seeds or the small hard sweets, crisps, or the raisins. So hard and big pieces of fruit like apple or vegetable or the popcorn, they should be avoided for the children who are less than 3 years of age, since choking can lead to death also. Diarrhea, it is uncommon among the breastfed infants, But because of certain infections due to lack of hygiene and inappropriate complementary feeding, say giving stale food to the child or not taking care of sterilization of utensils, it can cause diarrhea among infants. Let's summarize what we have studied about nutrition care during infancy in all the three lectures. We studied about various physiological changes that happen during infancy. Then we studied about how to monitor the growth of infant. Then we studied about the nutritional requirements during infancy. We studied about the macronutrient requirements and micronutrient requirements, recommended dietary allowance during infancy. Then we studied about the composition of breast milk. We studied about the timeline of milk production. We studied about colostrum, transitional milk, and mature milk and its composition. Then we studied about the advantages of the breastfeeding to the infant and mother. We studied about milk substitutes, about the special infant foods. We studied about feeding of the low birth weight and preterm infants. And then we also studied what are the feeding problems of the infants. And lastly, we studied about weaning foods, the process of weaning food, and problems associated with the weaning. This finishes our sixth module, that is nutrition care during infancy. Thank you very much.